Hello everyone, I'm Alex from Mission Automate. Today I want to show you some advanced prompting that I use to create communication rules with Gemini to make conversations more focused and fun. For this type of prompting, I've been pretty happy with the performance of Gemini. So my main motivation for getting this started was that I wanted to guide Gemini to provide more succinct and to the point responses. More specifically, I wanted to prevent Gemini from constantly prompting me for another question with something like, is there anything else I can help you with? Like over here. Now, initially, I was using this conversation to ask Gemini about a video game. However, then I went into this step where I asked it to define a set of communication rules. And it started out by suggesting 6 rules, and I was fairly happy with it. This is the starting point that I built on. I requested right away that we generalize the rules so that they don't have to be related to a specific topic. Now, I was hoping that Gemini would be able to reference these from another conversation, but it doesn't work like that, at least not yet. So once I established standard comms, I asked it to read them back to me just to make sure it hasn't immediately forgotten them. And it's quite stable. That's one of the things that I like about Gemini. Then I began to add more rules. So for example, I started with this rule that I called colloquialism. We aim to communicate with the warmth, brevity, and informality of casual communications between friends. Now my reason for this is I wanted to make responses from Gemini sound a little less artificial. And so Gemini added this rule, and I think it did color the conversation a bit. So then I wanted to add a rule, the specific thing that I cared about in the beginning, which is that we omit prompts for the rest of the conversation. And I was thinking about how to express this. And so I added a bit more detail saying, look, we can assume each conversation we have will continue indefinitely, even if we take breaks. Now, I even asked it for a good name for this rule, and it suggested Evergreen Chat. I thought it was adequate enough. I just asked it to rename it to just Evergreen. Okay, now this is where things started to get interesting because I wanted, in addition to the standard communication rules that I called standard comms, I wanted to ask Gemini to create another set of rules where we can focus on having a bit more fun with the conversation. So anyway, in the end, we ended up calling it Spice Comms. I thought that was pretty straightforward and simple. But what I wanted to do is instead of directly embedding these into our conversation, I suggested that we create a character that will role play the rules by adding a brief reply to each response. So we started brainstorming together. It gave some suggestions for names and personality and so on. And really I wanted to shape this interaction a bit in a more specific way. So I said, okay, let's go with capsaicin, but let's just call them caps. And then immediately Gemini suggested a few catchphrases and suggested that we brainstorm some quirks or mannerisms. And I thought that was a great idea. And this is where I thought, okay, hey, why don't we have caps use a mixture of mannerisms as caps evolves? And so in fact, I suggested that we make a mannerisms list for caps. And in the spirit of video games, let's rank them into rarities. The idea here being that there are probably mannerisms that I want to occur more rarely than others. So what fascinated me here is that when I suggested we make a mannerisms list and we split them out by rarity, it came up with an entire inventory of mannerisms. So just little quirks that caps could go into. So I moved a bunch of these mannerisms that are directed towards asking questions or provoking, and I said, okay, let's just put these as rare. And I'm not going to go through our entire conversation. There were a bunch of them until we got to something that I was happy with. And so now I was ready to test it, but now the other thing I had to do is I wanted to read the entire list of rules and the mannerisms so I could save them and put them in other conversations. So I went ahead and did that. And you can see them all here. And so now I thought, hey, let's test this out. And I asked it a question about a game, and it gave me the response. And then you can see here that caps intervened with a mannerism. So caps intervened here, and it even specified what kind of mannerism it used. I think this was exclamation point enthusiast. It's one of the favorite ones that it uses. Okay, so you can see that the tone of the response is very different from the tone of Cap's line here. And then I asked another question, and again it responded with a mannerism. This is called hyperbolic exaggeration. And it said something a bit outrageous just to kind of make a point, I suppose. Finally, I was very curious to see what would happen if I just tried to speak to Caps directly. So I said, "What's up, Caps?" So Caps responded with pop culture callback and told me that what's up is played out. So this is about it. I just wanted to take a few minutes to show you the kind of experiments I've been doing with Gemini to illustrate how advanced the prompting can be and how specific the responses could be when you define this type of communication rules. This example with the additional personality may not be very practical in most cases. This was just for fun. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up here, but I just wanted to show you this and hope that you will find it interesting. Feel free to reach out with any questions or other topics that you'd like to see discussed, and I will continue posting videos like this discussing advanced prompting with Gemini. Thank you.